Hi there. I wanted to say hello to everyone joining this webinar today entitled Learn More About the NIHR Predoctoral Award. Today you're going to hear from one of our senior program managers, Dr. Kieran Lee, who's going to give you a bit more information about the new simplified NIHR Predoctoral Award. And we are lucky enough to also be joined by several of our panel chairs who are going to tell you a bit more about what the committees are looking for when they are assessing applications. But first, I'm going to hand over to Kieran to take you through some information about the Predoctoral Award. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So yes, my name is Kieran Lee, and I am going to tell you about the new NIHR Predoctoral Award. So this award is designed to advance your health and social care research career at master's level, and it's available to 4 audiences: registered health and care professionals working in NHS settings, excluding doctors and dentists. It's available to people working in local authorities or an associated setting. It's also available to those in primary care settings, so general practitioners, general dental practitioners, community dentists and registered HCPs, and also to applicants proposing to undertake training as a methodologist in one of the applicable methodological areas. Full details on the eligibility criteria for each of these 4 audiences can be found on the website, and there's a link here in the slides, which we will send around to everyone at the end of the webinar. So this award is actually the first of our simplified awards to launch. So we've changed our award structure to make the offering simpler and easier to understand for people who want to apply for one of these career development opportunities. So now we have grouped awards by career level. So there's a pre-doctoral award, a doctoral award, and a postdoctoral award. So if you were familiar with our old structure of the awards, the pre-doctoral award replaces what was previously the Predoctoral Fellowship, the PCAF, which is the Predoctoral Clinical and Practitioner Academic Fellowship within the ICA programme, the PLEF, which is the Local Authority equivalent in the Local Authority Fellowship programme, and the In Practice Fellowship. So applicants now will all use the same application form, and NIHR staff stream your application to the correct committee based on your professional background and research setting. So we've also changed from using Aramis to accept award applications to the new NIHR awards management system. This is what the login screen looks like, and there's the link. Point to note, if you previously registered for an Aramis account, you'll have to register for a new account on the awards management system. So the NIHR partners with charities to offer jointly funded fellowships. These provide the fellow with the support of 2 funders. You become part of 2 research communities to support your fellowship and your next career steps. So each application goes through the same review process as other applications made in the round, and if it's deemed fundable by the committee, the NIHR and charity will co-fund the fellowship. If the charity is unable to provide the funding for that fellowship, the NIHR will fund the whole fellowship. So these are the 4 charity partners that are taking part in the 2025 round of the Predoctoral Award. You can find more details about charity partners and the funding opportunity on the website. So what is available through the Predoctoral Award? So simply put, the award is designed to take you now and to turn you into a competitive PhD applicant, or if you're not going to take the PhD route, to get you ready for the next step in your career. The award provides time to prepare a doctoral fellowship application and to undertake a personalised programme of academic training. Now, for some people, this could be a whole master's course, and for others it will be a selection of bespoke modules at master's level. Very much depends on the kind of training that you need to get you to that next step in your career. So I'm going to give you an overview of the funding that comes with the award. So if you are a clinical or practitioner applicant or based in a local authority, we will fund 12 months at full time, the academic component of the award. If you're a methodologist, you can apply for up to 24 months. My recommendation is for you to go to the website to see under what circumstances you could access 2 years of funding. For some of you, you would actually put in an application for 12 months funding. So you can do the award full time, but you can also select a part-time option. So uptake options are between 0.3 FTE and 1.0 FTE, and a list of different award durations and what that means in terms of your academic time per week is available on the website. So whilst you're undertaking the award, we will cover your salary. So this allows your employer to backfill your job and to release you to go off and do your academic training. So you can apply for up to £5,000 for bespoke master's level training per full-time year, or you can apply for full master's fees, and that would be at the UK or home rate, and that would be instead of the £5,000 bespoke training. If you're a methodologist who's eligible to apply for the 24-month award, you might, for example, do a full master's in year 1, and then you would have access to that £5,000 bespoke training in year 2. Regardless of your professional background, the award will give you up to £1,000 for conference fees and associated travel and subsistence. There is £1,000 available for supervisor costs, and there's £1,000 available for working with people and communities and research and inclusion combined. Working with people and communities was formerly referred to as patient and public involvement experience, PPI. If you're a clinical or practitioner applicant, or you're based in a local authority and you want to have the award full time, you can request up to 20% paid clinical or practice time within the award. So what that means is you are taking up the award full time, but spending 1 day a week doing your day job, as it were. If you're going to be taking up the award less than full time, the expectation is that you do your clinical and practice time outside of the NIHR award. Key dates for the award. So applications are open now, so open on the 29th of January. Applications close at 1 PM on the 20th of March. The funding recommendation to assess applications, it will happen in early June. And then award start dates for this round of the Predoctoral Award are the first of the month between September this year and March next year. So if you're looking for an award start date beyond March 2026, you should apply in the next round of the competition. So let's move on to what and who needs to be included in my application. So when you fill in your application form, you'll have to choose a contracting organisation, which was formerly referred to as the host, and if you're a clinical or practitioner local authority applicant, a partner organisation. There's a link on this slide which takes you to the website where you can read about various things that you may wish to consider when choosing which way round you put those organisations in your application form, if you do indeed choose to include a partner. So why would your organisation support you? Well, as I've mentioned, we will pay for the backfill. So that allows you to move into a supernumerary role and to still participate if you are taking up the award full time in your day job. It will help you generate research expertise or work on your leadership. It will help your organisation deliver on its research strategy objectives, raise its research profile, and strengthen academic partnerships in your locality. And all of these things can, of course, also aid with staff retention and recruitment. So within your application, you will need to describe your career so far. So there's an option within the form to put in any contextual factors. So for example, if you've taken parenting leave, or if you've not had a role with much protected time to allow you to get involved in research prior to putting you in your application for the Predoctoral Award. NIHR has also moved to using narrative CVs. So within the application system, you'll be able to download a template and then fill out the various sections. If you've not had any opportunity to get involved in research, that's fine. You would just put that in your narrative CV. Of course, if you've already had time to be involved in research activities, this is where you would put it. And there's also an opportunity for clinical or practitioner applicants to talk about practice career. So within your application, you are going to need to describe your research area of interest. You're also going to need to talk about your plans to work with people and communities and steps you're going to take to ensure that your research is inclusive. And you should outline your training program. You will need to have identified a primary academic supervisor, and that's regardless of your professional background. There are different requirements for further academic supervisors. So if you want to have an additional academic supervisor, that's optional. If you're a methodologist, you'll need at least one additional academic supervisor. If you're a clinical or practitioner applicant, you will also need to name a mentor in your application. Clinical and practitioner applicants can also include a practice supervisor. So this is, for example, your line manager, who's there to ensure that you are actually released from your day job in order to undertake the academic training. Finally, you'll need the support from the heads of department at your academic host and your partner organisation, if you include a partner in your application. They will need to submit a joint statement of support explaining how they're going to help you undertake the award. So I've touched on the budget available for your application, so please make sure that when you fill in your application that you stay within the budgetary caps for each of the different elements that the award will fund. You should undertake a thorough and accurate costing, so you will also need support from your finance team in order to do this. If you're used to our pre-simplified awards, your finance officer would be a participant. They would have to log in and undertake certain actions within the application form. There's no requirement for them to actually participate in your application now, but you do need to have had discussions with them in order to put your finances in correctly. So we're going to move on now to hearing from our funding committee chairs. They're going to tell you a few top tips regarding the sorts of things they're looking for in an application. So just to set the scene before we hear from the chairs, in general, they are going to assess your application according to person, place, and training, which means that you should articulate in your application your readiness to move on to PhD study, what training and development you'll need to get you to that point of being competitive for a PhD application, your career trajectory, and then any research or practice experience that you have to date. In terms of your contracting organisation and partner organisation, if applicable, you've got to demonstrate relationships with your team, show that there is track record in relevant field so that you're going to an appropriate place to do the research that you have proposed in your application. If there are any links to NIHR infrastructure, that's helpful to mention. Your host and partner needs to show commitment to you. If you are a clinical or practitioner applicant, you will need to include a mentor, and you should be clear on their role, so they're not third supervisor. You also should demonstrate that your supervisors and mentor, if you've included one, have the necessary time and commitment to you and expertise to be effective in supporting you whilst you hold the award. So the third thing, broadly speaking, that will be in your application is your training and development plan. So you should have some time in there to prepare for your PhD application. Your training and development plan should be bespoke and ambitious, but also achievable. Use available tools to identify needs and gaps. Within your application, you will need to outline a research area of interest. So you don't need to have a fully formed PhD proposal, but you need to be able to say what it is that you're doing, why you're doing it, and why it's important. Think about your professional development as well as your academic development. Make sure that you stay within the budgetary caps. And finally, but most importantly, you are going to need to demonstrate your involvement of community, working with people and communities, and research inclusion in your application. So, without further ado, let's move on to hearing some advice from the chairs. So I'm going to hand over now to Professor Fiona Cramp, who is the co-chair of the Health and Care Professionals Funding Committee.
Very much, Kieran. That was very comprehensive. So obviously I don't want to duplicate what you've already said. So just to pick up on a few things that we are looking for as a committee. So we're obviously looking at applications from the health and care professionals, and we're wanting to receive applications from people who are really committed to a career as a practitioner academic. And it's really important in your applications that you're enthusiastic about your future role as a leader within your clinical field, and anything you can demonstrate that you've already shown leadership always looks good on an application. So just to cover a few points that Kieran maybe hasn't mentioned, we would recommend that if you are going forward to a doctorate application or a doctoral application, you will need to have evidence of outputs and dissemination. And therefore, as part of your predoctoral award, we would suggest that you include a plan for developing your outputs, particularly if you don't have any already. So that could be papers, abstracts, conference presentations, etc. We would also encourage you to use an analysis tool, something such as VTI, to identify your training needs within the application, and really be explicit about how you've used this and what tool you have used. That certainly helps the panel to look at your application. Two other points just to raise is in terms of your host institution, it's really important that they show on the application how they're going to support you, and also giving that commitment that they will give you protected time if you're successful with the application. And the final point to raise, particularly from our panel, is we are really keen to see that you've got patient and public involvement on your application. So it's great if you've already chatted to people from patient and public representatives, but also consider the training that you might need in order to develop your expertise in this area, and also to progress forward for your doctoral application to shape the project that you're going to do. I don't think Janelle is on the call yet, Kieran, so I think that's probably all from our panel.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Fiona. That's very helpful. Thank you for your comments there. Yes, so unfortunately, Janelle isn't going to be available to join until later on. So at this point, I think I'll
I've just lost your sound. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Have I been talking with mute on?
Yes, just for a minute. I think I
That's
could.
a little bit embarrassing. Yes, well, I was just going to say, here are a few words from Professor Caroline Mitchell. Thank you, Caroline.
Hello, I'm representing the panel, which is the In Practice Fellowship, which is for primary care healthcare practitioners. I would add, just to add to what's already been said, because all of the things that Fiona's just said also apply to our panel as well. An excellent application is characterised by this clear story about the person, and then there's a real clarity that that person sat down with their primary academic supervisor plus any additional supervisors, and that they've worked out clearly what their training plan is. They've got a clear focus for what the work will be during their in practice fellowship, and that there's a clear pathway towards a PhD. It's really important that you contact a supervisor early and to work with them on all aspects of your application. And it's important that your supervisor has a track record in PhD supervision. You may have that more of that across the sort of wider supervision team, but that primary supervisor needs to have that and to write a bespoke statement for you. And this is important because I think, as Fiona alludes to when she mentioned to the sort of opportunities for dissemination, conferences, seminars, you need to be in an academic environment that's allowing you to grow in confidence and to start to prepare for that PhD application. So please, contact your supervisors, and there needs to be a track record because you need to have a safe pair of hands to support you in the competitive next stage fellowship. And again, the statements from your supervisor and your academic environment should be bespoke to you. It should be really clear. And you should be thinking, I think, particularly with primary care, as Fiona says, we want people who have got leadership in clinical and academic practice. So, that link between clinical practice and academic practice, and of course, how that links you to patients and communities in primary care. It's a primary care UK context award, not a global health award. That's the other thing just to bear in mind. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. So we have got Janelle on the call. So if Janelle is available, I'm not too sure I'm going to be able to get the slide to go back, but if you are available, Janelle, and if you want to say a few words, that's great.
Hi, Kieran. I've literally just joined, so I'm not just at the end of Fiona's presentation, so I'm not sure where it got up to or anything, but I guess we can all just flag questions, can't we?
Yes, well, yeah, perhaps you are welcome to participate in the Q&A session, as Fiona has already given us some good top tips if you're a health and care professional applicant to this award. Do we have GJ on the call? I skipped past your slide earlier.
Hello, I am here.
I'll hand over to you, GJ. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. So my name is GJ Melendez-Torres, and I chair the Local Authority Social Care and Public Health Funding Committee. And my key points follow on pretty closely from what my colleagues have said before, but I just wanted to raise 4 additional points in respect of that. The first is that, just as with all of the other predoctoral awards, involvement and engagement is really important. But in this committee, we tend to think of it less as patient involvement and engagement and more as community involvement and engagement. And the reason for that is that the applicants who come to our committee are predominantly working in local authority contexts as well. So dealing with different kinds of problems than, for example, the management of specific conditions in primary care or in healthcare contexts as well. So community involvement and engagement, making sure you do that to a good standard before your application and having clear plans to deliver that throughout your award are going to be something that we're going to look at very carefully. The second thing I wanted to add is that in addition to a very, very specific statement with respect to how your host academic institution will support you, we expect to see that from a local authority context as well. So we will want to be reassured that not only will you have the right academic support, but you'll also have the right workplace support, especially if you are planning on continuing on working in that local authority context over the course of your award. The third thing I wanted to add is that certainly something we look at for people who are coming from a local authority context is a high degree of embeddedness of their project. And what I mean by that specifically is that we get a very clear sense from your application about how it is that your proposed work follows on from your professional experience, from your expertise, and is deeply connected with your professional experience and expertise working in that local authority and in that community context as well. So even though your research doesn't have to be limited, for example, in terms of the sample that you might be recruiting for a study, it does need to be considered very carefully with respect to how your proposed study meets national priorities and meets local authorities in terms of the work that is going to be important. I'm just going to circle back to one of the questions in the chat, which is the difference between PPIE and community involvement and engagement, especially if you're not working in the local authority context. What I'll add to that is that PPIE stands for patient and public involvement and engagement, and is often framed in the context of trying to address, for example, specific patient experiences. Here, because particularly in this committee, we're often less interested in specific health conditions as such, we will often expect to see engagement with broader community groups, community stakeholders, etc., as part of the underpinning involvement and engagement work as well. The fourth point I just want to raise, and I'm sure this is common across all of the chairs of all the committees, is that particularly for this Predoctoral Award committee, we're here because we want to see you succeed. So our approach to reviewing applications is highly supportive, is aimed towards success, acknowledges that you are at an early stage in your career, and really seeks to develop the people who will go very far in their careers at an early stage through a fundamentally very supportive process. So the worst that can happen is that you won't win in this particular time, but we do often have people who come back second or third times and are successful on the reapplication. So you should rest assured that when we read your application, we're reading it in a supportive fashion, because again, the reason we are on this funding committee is because we want to see you succeed early in your career. So I'll pause there and hand it over to the next chair.
Thank you very much, GJ. So if we have Laura Gray on the call, I will hand over to you at this point.
Thank you. So I'm the chair of the methodology panel. My name's Laura Gray and I'm based at the University of Leicester. And I just want to echo GJ's final comment. This is a really nice panel to be a member of, because it's so nice to be funding people at the start of their careers, and we are a very positive panel, so I really would encourage you to apply. I've just got a few things I want to cover. So we're a panel that funds aspiring methodologists. So we're not a panel that funds people from other specialities that want to get methods training. So for example, if you're a midwife and you're applying, you need to convince us that you're going to stop your career as a midwife and you're going to start a new career as an aspiring statistician, for example. That's what we're here to fund. We're here to fund the methodologists of tomorrow who are going to be leading methodological work in the future, whichever methodology that might be. So that really needs to come across in your application. This seems to be a particular problem for those that are applying to become epidemiologists. So just something to focus on if that's your career area, really persuading us, showing your enthusiasm that that's the career path that you want to follow in the future. As the others have said, the training plan is really important. Sometimes it feels like the training plan is a bit of a shopping list of lots of different courses that don't really tell a story as to where that training plan is going. So I think it's really important to think about the narrative that goes along with your training plan and why you've chosen to do the specific courses that you've chosen to do. But also, it's not just about courses. Think creatively about your training plan. You know, it might be shadowing, placements. It might be undertaking a small research project in order to gain some of those research skills. So do think creatively when you're putting the plan together. but think about how it holds together as a whole, and it's not just a list of however many courses you can get out of the budget. That sort of narrative is important. Sometimes people apply and they already have an MSc qualification and they apply to do another one. If you are applying to do a second MSc, we really need a robust justification as to why that MSc is required. It's not to say that we never fund people to do an MSc that already have one, but we need to see that robust justification in the application. If you already have an MSc and you're just applying for the sort of training award without the MSc part, generally those awards will be 12 months long. If you are applying for a longer award, and you can do, but again, we need that robust justification as to why you need longer than 12 months to succeed in your application. And just something that we've seen in applications to date, the mixed methodologists, we really need to see that grounding in both quant and qual techniques coming across in your training plan. Now, I understand that putting a narrative CV together when you're either quite early on in your career, maybe you're intending to do the Predoc Award straight after your undergrad degree, or you're having a career change, but do think about the skills that you've picked up along the way, those transferable skills. We're not expecting you, to have lots of outputs to talk about. Some people do, but the majority of applicants don't. But it's thinking about those things that you have done that give you skills that will be important. So things like internships, research projects, dissertation projects, etc. And then finally, supervisors. It's really important that you've got adequate supervision at this early stage of your career. So the boxes where supervisors tell us about the support that they're going to give you is really important. And we want to know about their experience of supporting other methodologists. So it's just to make sure you've really got that buy-in from your supervision team. And for the host support, the same goes. We see quite often a number of applications from a single institute, and the host support section is a copy and paste. It's exactly the same in each of the applications. What we'd expect to see is that support being tailored to you and your award. So it's just about making sure you engage with the supervisors, that the host institute is engaged, and that they don't let your application down, and that those sections really do outline the support that you're going to get and how that support, your support, is different from someone else who's also applying from that institution. So I think that's all I wanted to say about the methodology panel.
Thank you very much, Laura, and thank you to the other chairs as well for your comments and advice. It was a lot of applicability across the 4 different panels in terms of what goes into a good application. So thank you for those comments. Well, this brings us on to the panel Q&A session. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and hand over to Karen Fernandez.
Thank you, Kieran. I'm going to invite all our fellow panelists to turn on their cameras if they can. And we'll go through as many of these questions as we can, but we've got so many that I don't think we're going to get through them all, but we will try. What we will do is we will look at the ones that have the most upvotes. If you go into your question and answer pop-up box and then look at the most upvotes, we can see that the top question is about the narrative CV. So, and a couple of people have picked up on this already, spoken to this. Seems not applicable to Predoc Award. Should application be mostly about applicant's background with only the last section relating to reasons for doing the award? Laura, you just picked up on that in your, when you were speaking last. Is there anything else you want to say about that, about guidance for the narrative CV? I would just think creatively, and it's about getting your enthusiasm across as to why you want to be a methodologist. That's what we want to see. And actually, some of the applications have really stuck with me when people have really shared their personal stories for why they want to follow this career path. I remember them. So So it's thinking about, was there a particular research project you did while you were doing your undergrad degree that really inspired you? Was it having a parent that was unwell and you got really interested in reading research papers? We once had an Olympian apply that got really into their data. So I think it's thinking creatively. We understand that you're not going to have, at a very early stage of change the world. We're not expecting you to have the same narrative CV as a professor, for example. They will be read in terms of being at an early stage or swapping career. But I think it's just thinking creatively and thinking why you wanted that, sort of that authenticity and the genuine reasons as to why you want to follow this career path. That's wonderful. Thank you. That's a really nice answer to that question. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next one. This one for an NIHR staff member. Can the conference fees include contributing to international conferences, or would it be UK only? Kieran, did you want to pick that one up?
Happy to pick this question up. Thank you, Karen. Yes, you can use your conference fees to attend international conferences. It doesn't have to just be UK based. I think it's up to you to identify the most appropriate conference to attend. As long as you're within budget, that's fine.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got for local authority applicants, are you able to give more detail about what counts as an associated setting? I think this is part of the guidance note where we say you must be in a local authority or an associated setting. There is a bit more detail on the website about that, what does count as an associated setting. So I would encourage you to look at the award page and the funding opportunities post to get that bit more detail, but I don't know if anybody else wants to come in on that.
Yeah, so Karen, I'll just comment on that briefly. So in the past, we've seen applicants, for example, from third sector organizations who are involved in the delivery of local authority services. For example, we've seen applications from educational psychologists who work for CICs or third sector organizations that are contracted to deliver educational psychology services on behalf of a local authority. As long as that link is clear and as long as we know you're not taking the mick, I think, to be blunt, I think we're usually pretty open to hearing about that. But I think, again, the spirit of this committee is to really support researchers who are delivering work of priority to local authorities and intend to have that career as a practitioner academic.
Brilliant, thank you. Caroline, would you like to come in? Oh, I'll carry on because we've got so much to get through. The next question that's most upvoted is about explaining a bit more about charity partnerships in the NIHR. So this is a good question. So we've listed 4 charity partnerships for the Predoc Award, and there's a bit of information about what each of those charities is looking for. So there's an opportunity for applicants to this award look at those 4 charities, see if what they're doing or want to do aligns with any of the 4 charities, and there's normally a contact person to get in touch with if you do think you've got some commonalities, just to talk it through with the charity. And then what would happen is the charity would have a dialogue with you, and if the committee thinks that your application is worth funding, it could be that you are co-funded by the charity and NIHR jointly, so you benefit from both the charities networks and the NIHR award. Did anyone else want to come in on charity partnerships? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just to add to that, I think it's really important for all applicants considering partnering with a charity to contact the charity ahead of submitting an application. You need to determine whether your career progression and your research interests align with the priorities of the charity for any given year, because these change. They tend to change as trends do as well, and demands. And also as to benefits that you can reap from a charity partnership. This is not just being able to use the networks of the charity, but being able to present at their events, for instance, use their resources. This is very individual again, but those are just some examples that you might want to consider. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Sylvia. Right, Caroline, I'm going to bring you back in. I hope been able to unmute?
Yes, I have. I was switched off, so I couldn't. Just very quickly, we're talking a lot about multiple possible organisations being involved. One thing is that even if the finance part of your host doesn't have to be active on the form, everybody will need to have a detailed finance breakdown. It has to be done by somebody. It has to be done by somebody within the host organisation with all the on costs and the salaries for up to 4 years ahead. So that people will need to do that in very good time. You usually need to be starting those conversations with the finance departments at universities and equally in NHS organisations, and I'm sure at local authorities as well, because the finance people do lots of other stuff. So really you need to be doing that 6 weeks before. So even if it doesn't need signing off, it would need signing off by the head of department, and they'll need to see the finance, particularly if they're providing your salary over 4 years and your pension contributions and so on and so on. Yeah.
Good advice to be thinking about finance ahead of time. And there's also some finance justification you have to write as well.
Yeah.
Involved.
The person and the supervisor won't be able to do that on their own.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got one from Camille Evans about Social Work England registered social workers working in the NHS as mental health practitioners. Are they eligible? Not HCPC registered, not working in a local authority. So if Social Work England is listed on the list of eligible registration bodies, that would be fine, but I think it's worth contacting the office to make sure, Camille, before you go any further. Okay, so with conference costs, given we might not know where a conference will be in 2026, how do we estimate travel costs? Okay, any NHR colleagues want to take that one?
I'll take that question, Karen. Yeah, so I mean, you can obviously look at the cost for a similar journey this year and then make an estimate. I think it's okay if some of your costs for conference and the associated travel and subsistence go up or down a little bit. The important thing is to get in touch with the office early doors and to sort of explain how your budget has changed. I mean, of course, we won't be able to provide money above the £1,000 limit, but you know, if you've spotted something that you want to go to and you need to take some money out of your budget from elsewhere, that's all absolutely fine.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, just to add to what Kieran said, we also receive a lot of applications where people think a little bit ahead. So instead of providing us with the original numbers, they add a little bit of inflationary cost to if an event is supposed to take place in the following year or a couple of years after that. And that's okay too, provided that you stay within the budgetary caps for the award.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Likely dates for the next round of the award will be again launching in January, closing around March time. So that was the next question. So hopefully we've covered that one. Then we've got, are those eligible working in educational establishments? So it might depend on whether you have a professional background that is part of one of the 4 audience criteria. You can have a look at those on our webpage, or whether you're working with a local authority, for example, there might be a route there. So it depends. You're welcome to contact the office and talk through your individual circumstances to just get some clarity there. So I think next voted are the award funding per financial year, i.e. the £1,000 for conference fees, supervision, PPIE for both years if completed full-time over 2 years. Asma, did you want to take that one?
Yeah, so for methodologists, it's just for the award duration. Sorry, what was the question, Karen?
Oh, are the fees per year? So what we've allowed per cap per year if completed over 2 years.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Sophie, can the fee for the supervision cost be used for the practice supervisor as well as the academic supervisor? So the supervisory costs can be used in the way that you best feel fits your award. So that's fine. So just going to most upvote. Sorry, I've gone right to the bottom of the list. So can the £1,000 for working with people and communities be used for training under this umbrella, or does this need to be included in the training costs? Kieran, did you want to take that one?
So it's for working with people and communities activities, really, rather than training. So if you were proposing training in that area, then those costs should be included in your training and development budget. You may also be able to get money for that sort of training from another source if you weren't able to include that in your training and development budget as part of your award.
Sylvia.
Yeah, the only exception would be if you had some training planned for your patients and public contributors, then that would come under this section of the budget. But otherwise, like Kieran said, all training courses and development activities should go in a separate section.
Brill. Thank you. So we've got the next one is, do you have to have a place on a course before applying, as the funding date may close before the course dates are available? So you wouldn't need to have a place, but you would need to have a plan for what you want to do, and probably a bit of a backup plan in case you can't get onto that course. Anyone else want to say anything? No? Okay. Can a master's be taken for 2 years, and under what circumstances can this be done? And that's our colleagues. Want to take that one?
Yes. So, sorry, go on, Kieran.
No, you go on, Asma, sorry.
Yeah, so if you're a methodologist, you can undertake the master's part-time for 2 years, depending on the master's you're doing, yeah. But you can also take it full-time and then utilize the next year for training and development.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. So I see that one has 14. So what level of detail is expected about a research project, and where do you expect to see this information? Career development program for personal career development words or other? So that is a good question. What level of detail is expected about a research project for a pre-doc awardee? Do any of our chairs want to come in on that? Laura?
Yeah, so this isn't a research award, obviously, but some of the training element can be gained, particularly in the methodology panel, through the undertaking of a small-scale research. There might be some preliminary work, a systematic review, for example, that might feed into a doctoral fellowship application. And I would see that as a training element. So I would put that in your training plan. In the research section, that's really, I guess, the vision for where you see your particular methodological expertise going. You know, what area, and it can be quite broad at this stage. Do you see, if you're going to apply for a doctoral fellowship after this, that being in? And it's quite useful to think about that, because that really then feeds into your training plan for this award. So, you know, it could be, as vague as dealing with missing data in clinical trials, or, you know, something along those lines, but definitely methodological in nature for the methodology panel. But I see, if there is going to be a small research project element, that is part of the training rather than the research vision, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think also from an NHR perspective, we would expect to see that information in the career development program. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I don't think my most upvotes is working because I'm not getting the top ones, but I'm going to go with one with 11 thumbs up. Is the bridge 6 month 1.0 FTE no longer an option for practitioners? So there is still an opportunity to be able to do a 6-month award. Kieran, did you want to?
Yeah, happy to take that one. Thank you, Karen. Yeah, so the Bridge Award has gone by name. However, if you were looking at the Bridge Award in the pre-simplified schemes, that was to enable people who already had relevant master's level training to apply for a shorter duration version. So if you are in that boat, you already have relative master's level training, or feel like you would only need a 6-month fellowship to get you onto a PhD application, when you fill in the application form, you just fill in this application form as if you were applying for the full 12 months, and you just within your application say, I want 6 months full time, or you want it less than full time for a longer duration, and then say what it is that you've done, and then what you will be using the Predoctoral Award for. So point to note, the Bridge type awards came with only a very small pot of money. So for the Predoctoral Award, the amount of funding is just proportional to the overall award duration. So for 6 months now, you can apply for up to £2,500 worth of training and development, and up to £500 worth of conference attendance, etc., etc. So if it was half of the maximum duration, it's half of the money as outlined in the funding slide.
Brilliant, thank you. And I had a hand up, Caroline. Sorry, did you want to come in?
Yes, it's just really sort of just to tie something in for the clinical practitioners about the research plan and training. And I think it links in with the previous thing about patient and public involvement. So to be clear, patient and public involvement is now focused around communities and people, whether that's in a clinical setting that you're doing your research or in a local authority. It's about the people that we see day to day in practice. And people may understandably not be experienced in how you weave patient and community voices throughout your research. So it would be totally appropriate to have training in that. But you've now got £1,000, which is really new and fantastic, because then you've got that money to fund the time with patients and public. Look at the include guidance, which tells you how to include people, particularly from underserved communities, and look in the NIHR website, which has got excellent information and resources to talk to you about best practice in engagement. And those are the sort of activities that you'll be able to fund through that £1,000, and they will be able to help you in refining your research question and how to do research that's meaningful and is likely to be able to recruit people to it. So there's lots of examples about how you can do that in clinical practice, and the NIHR is packed full of useful pointers for how to write a good patient and public involvement and inclusion plan. Thanks.
Brilliant, thank you, that's very helpful. So now back with my upvotes. So 18 upvotes. Can a copy of the full application be made available in Word format? So we will need to take that one behind the scenes and see if we can do that. So also, what goes in letters of support section? Is it the joint statement of support, or should your supervisors also write a letter of support? Colleagues,
So
anybody want to take this? Yeah.
So your supervisors have their own section of the application form to add their statement of support. So when you invite them as a co-applicant through the awards management system and they log in, they will then have the opportunity to fill that in. So the statements of support that go as an upload for your application, those are that should actually be ideally a joint statement of support between your contracting organisation and your partner organisation, if you've included one from the relevant heads of department.
Brilliant, thank you. So the one I can see next with the most upvotes is, do you need to do a small research project within the award? If so, would this be documented in the research area or career development programme section? So anybody like to tackle that? Fiona?
I'm happy to kick off with that. We see a mixture really and the success. It doesn't matter which route you go down to be a successful application. So we do see quite a lot of applications where people want to do a systematic literature review, and that would underpin their subsequent doctoral application. So my advice would be to always think ahead, think about what do you need for that doctoral application. It might be that you need to collect a little bit of data that shows that you've got a feasible project for your doctoral application. But what makes an unsuccessful application is someone that wants to come in on the pre-doctoral award and do a massive project at the expense of not developing their expertise through training and developing their networks and all those other things as a clinical leader. So I think it does depend on what your future doctorate's going to be, but don't bite off more than you can chew and expect to do a massive project within this award.
I can see lots of your fellow chairs agreeing with that point. Thank you, Fiona. Caroline, did you want to come in on that?
That was just exactly what I was going to say. One of the reasons why, if we see that somebody's not getting proper rounded, because you won't get necessarily the opportunities to get this really rounded research training that's going to allow you to choose the right methodological approach for your doctorate fellowship. So exactly that. Don't be too ambitious, because that we pick that up.
Brilliant, thank you. So how do we add outputs such as conference presentations or publications that do not appear in ORCID? So we have already mentioned those about going into the narrative CV. Is there anything else we need to add there?
You can manually add to ORCID.
Manually add to ORCID.
You go in. I can do it if I can do it. I'm pretty certain you still can do it. If I can do it, anybody can. Yeah, you can manually add as well as have automatic updates.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so do you have to be in a full-time permanent position at the point of application if applying as a clinical applicant? And our team, Kieran, do you want to take that one?
So you do need to have a substantive contract of employment as a HCP, or you would have to have one in place taking up the award with a partner organisation.
Brilliant, thank you. So probably last couple now. At the point of application, we will need to have obtained institutional ethical approval for our proposed work with people and communities. Sorry, will we need to have? So we don't need to have, but we need to see some sign that it will be coming. Is that correct, team?
If necessary, then by the time you take up the award and start doing the activity in question, then yes, you would need to have that approval in place.
Brilliant, thank you. So we'll finish with a nice one. What do you want to see on the Gantt chart? Fiona.
Hi, again, happy to kick off with this one. I would say everything, but being realistic, because we want to be able to read it, it's really important to have the training clear on the Gantt chart. And also, if you are planning to do any data collection or bits of research, is to have that spaced out phase, show the different phases of that on the Gantt chart, but also make sure you put in things like how you're going to interact, like your PPI or patient public involvement and engagement, and any training that you're doing, but also contact with your supervisors and any other networking, so conferences. So pretty much all the key things that you're going to do within the application, thinking of that project, place and person.
Brilliant, thank you, Fiona. Anyone else looking for anything else in the Gantt chart? I think that was pretty comprehensive. Okay, so we have lots of questions here that we haven't got to. So we are preparing an FAQ document. So we will take a note of anything that we've got here, because hopefully we'll have some overlap in some of the questions, and we will be putting that FAQ online. Just a reminder to applicants that you can go and find chairs' reports for the last round of each of these awards that will tell you some helpful tips from the chairs about anything that kind of they saw that was common from the last round, and they are linked to from our web pages, so that's a very good read. So we want to thank all of our chairs and NHR colleagues for being with us today and for answering questions. Thank you very much. And thank you to everybody who's joined us on the webinar. And, you know, if you do have personal circumstances, please do write into the NHR colleagues on the call, and we will be able to come back to questions about your own situation. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.